We are all human, so.
Okay, I have to leave at 8, but I'll be here for a while.
Great, thank you. So good evening, everyone. My name is Daniel Johnson, Chair of the Pedestrian and Bicycle Commission. Tonight, it's Thursday, May 27th. It's at 7:24 p.m. We are getting the meeting started later than expected, so appreciate everyone accommodating the short notice of the special session, as well as, thanks to the host for making it. It's not always easy to do a 7 p.m. meeting, so thank you. With that said, I'll take attendance. Let me just get so in attendance: Daniel Johnson, myself here, Colin Gillespie.
Colin Gillespie here.
Jill Morosky.
Here.
Dan Firestone. I know Dan reached out to me on the meeting, but I haven't heard back. Denise Gutierrez.
I'm sorry.
Thanks, Denise. Was that you?
Yes. Did you hear me? I said,
yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Denise.
Daniel, there was at least one other person that wanted to come to the meeting, John Wesson.
He would be a call-in, correct?
Yeah, he was having trouble even calling in, but he kept sending emails. He really wants to attend, but
well, he can probably call in now that the meeting started. The problem was before the meeting had started.
Okay, I'll email him.
So we should see him joining soon.
Okay, he doesn't know it's going, right? Because he didn't get
No, he just sent a thank you, Daniel, for letting him know.
Oh, okay, good. Okay. Because he's not on our
thank you, somebody.
List. Yeah.
Okay.
I have the right call-in number because the call-in from the email chain has a different number than the WebEx that Megan sent.
Megan, can you just confirm what the call-in number is?
I guess not the call-in number, the access code.
I did have an issue with the access code called in. Megan, do you mind just reminding us what the access code is for this?
Yeah, I can pull that up.
Just trying to finish attendance here. So Ken Livingston.
Here.
Paul Hogan. I see you, Paul. Don't hear you, Paul.
Express. Put in the chat.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul.
Okay, that works.
Ryan Obrega and Sandy Fry.
Here.
Thanks, Sandy. We have six members here. So Megan posted the access code that is different than what's on. So on the different what's on YouTube page. So let me just send that to everyone. Sandy, I should lean on you because you have more experience with this. We're about 27 minutes late with a different access code. Should we continue the meeting or reschedule?
John Wesson just wrote that he could see the video, but the YouTube doesn't.
The dial-in doesn't work. So Megan, you need to give us the proper dial-in number that Daniel can send out.
I have the dial-in number here. Let me know when you're ready. The number, so the call-in number for everyone listening is 1-415-655-0001. Access code 142572 9839. I'm going to repeat the number and the access code, which is 1415-655-0001. Access code 1425729839.
I'm going to ask John if that's what he dialed.
And while Sandy is on, I don't know, Ed wanted to come to the meeting, Ed Pollock. He sent us an email this afternoon. I don't know how we can get this to
Yeah,
him,
I'm
but
going to send I'll follow up with the larger email list of what the call-in number is. 1 second. Assuming everyone's by their emails. Well, we'll see how that goes. Might lose a lot of people who were subscribing prior. All right. Just send an email to a larger list for emails, and we're move forward.
You know, I really don't know why the town won't let regular individuals access the meeting in the same way that we do. We do not get that many people that should be a problem. You know, maybe we have a handful. Maximum would be like 5 people. I don't understand that because it's very awkward, this call-in stuff.
It is,
can WebEx have unlimited? Could it be like Zoom where you could have 200 people?
Yes.
I don't know.
That's what we use at work
So
for public meetings. I've had 50 people in a meeting. Well, maybe not that many. I've had 30.
I want to pause on that. So Sandy, in your experience, right? So the meeting, the agenda that was sent out and posted on the public site has a different access code number than the one we are communicating to the public to access. Should we ask for a reschedule of the meeting or continue
No,
the meeting?
let's go ahead with the meeting because we just have to be practical, Daniel. You need to have this meeting before the council has their committee meeting.
All right. So the meeting today is brought forth because there is an item on presented by the Town of Engineers called Town of West Hartford Neighborhood Street Traffic Calming Program. Share my screen.
Daniel, before we go to, before we start talking about it, oh no. Is this already accepted? I don't know what we're supposed to be doing in this process. Is this going to be modified? Is this just a rough draft?
This is in draft form. It will be presented to the town council in draft form. We've been engaged as a commission and to let the public know as well that this isn't in draft format, but we have the opportunity to provide feedback before it's finalized by the town and before it's presented to the town council.
And I think a little bit of the frustration is town staff really didn't plan for us to provide input. because we got it like the day before our last meeting, so nobody had time to look at it. So I think that's a frustration that we think that the town would look to us to advise them on these things.
They did say they were going to bring it back for us in time to give feedback when they first told us about this last year.
So
So I'm just a little surprised it got done, and then, but
okay. Well, let's talk about it, right? That's what the point of this meeting is, to take a look at the traffic calming program presented by the town. And just want to make sure on your screen, you just see the neighborhood street traffic calming program.
yes, we see it. It's very difficult to read. It's pretty small.
Okay.
I mean, I have the version that you mailed out open on my laptop because it's easier for me to look at that as we page through.
I do too.
Okay, great. So this is just on the screen for awareness of what we're talking about. It is in the agenda if you open up the public site. So diving in, just want to cover an overview of what the traffic calming program is. And it's presented by the town as in my perspective, a procedural way to look at ways of slowing down or calming traffic in designated areas. And in this program, they break out a number of features here. And just giving a brief overview so everyone can understand. A systematic process to evaluate, design, and maintain measures that are effective in calming traffic and enhance the neighborhood environment. Traffic calming measures are intended to accomplish the following goals: encourage safe and appropriate travel speeds, lower the frequency and severity of crashes, improve driver behavior, promote pedestrian and cycling use, maintain the functionality of the street network without significantly diverting traffic to other local streets, reduce cut-through traffic on local roads, limit impact to emergency vehicles response, and reduce the need for police traffic enforcement, and lastly, enhance neighborhood appearance. So any questions on the overview from the commission, and then I'll open it up after that to the public?
I don't have a question, but I'm getting a lot of interference. Someone either has their mic on or there's something wrong with WebEx. It's stopped now.
Okay,
Someone had their mic on. Sorry.
all right. So any questions on the overview? Okay. So bringing this up, right? There's a lot in this material here. So I want to start with the program overview, and there's a breakdown of arterial roads, collector roads, and local roads. From the commission, first I want to start with the commission. So any feedback on this program overview?
Well, this was what Ed Powlick's email was about. This very core assumption that the roads are so binary divided between, arterial collectors and local. And I mean, I don't know if everyone read his email, but and I guess he's not here. It's unfortunate he's not here and people couldn't read his email, but he has serious concerns that assumptions can be made that some roads, and he named all of them, are not going to be available for traffic calming. And these are residential areas, Fern, I can't name them all, but Mountain, a whole lot of them. And he has deep concerns, as I do, and I raised at the meeting when they came to us, that it's an arbitrary decision they made, maybe by traffic volume, but these roads also people live on, walk on, and bike on, and they're not having any protection at all. As a matter of fact, they may become busier with traffic calming out of their streets. This is Ed pointed out a very serious problem, and I concur. I think it's a very serious problem. That you can assume that people on Ridgewood don't care that their road's been called now a collector road, and they have no wherewithal to calm traffic.
I think if you look further down in that paragraph after the bullet points, it says, many traffic calming techniques are inconsistent with the primary function of arterial and collector streets. However, complete streets concepts or a road diet may be applicable when there's a demonstrated need to reduce speeding and improve the safety on a major roadway. Refer to the town's complete streets policy for more information. So I think they're designing this program as something where a neighborhood can come forward and say, hey, we think we have a problem on our street and we want you to address it. So it seems like the town is saying, that's okay, we'll let you come forward in that way with petitions, et cetera, that they describe later. But we won't let a group of people who live on Boulevard or a group of people who live on Fern to do the same thing. We as the town might, if they come to us and say they're speeding, we might look at that.
But let me interrupt, Sandy. I understand that completely. And that's the problem, that they've decided what streets.
Right. I'm just saying, Jill, I didn't get to finish my point. I think what the town is designing, they think they're designing this thing strictly for neighborhood streets. And so I think we can look at it in two ways. One is we should look at it in terms of the neighborhood streets, the local streets. Do we think this is appropriate for those streets, number one? And then the second issue is, wait a minute, aren't there other streets that ought to be included in this also? But I think we can look at this for what it does for those local streets as sort of a separate element from what they're saying about arterials and collectors. So I'll mute.
I understand that, but it's still going to, what they said at the meeting is that they would have traffic law enforcement, that's what they're attempting to do. You saw how hard it was to get a road diet on a street. And look at it, it's taken 5, 6, 7 years. So I think that the problem isn't, let's look, you go ahead and look, but I'm not interested in just looking what they want us to do and then said, hey, take care of this. I think if people have an objection to the fact that they've designated some neighborhoods unable to use this plan, like delegitimize people on Ridgewood, on Sedgwick, to be able to have their neighborhood say in the calming of their streets. They've decided. They haven't asked neighborhoods. They haven't given us a real reason. And they may be using volume. I don't know, because they don't have Flag on there. And Flag is a hugely fast connector street that a lot of people use, right? But that's a neighborhood street, and there's hardly any people living on it.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that, Jill, but I think I'm saying that there are kind of two issues. One issue is to say, hey, we don't think you should just take all arterials and collectors off of this, but we should still look at what they have in here.
I didn't say we shouldn't look at it. I'm all for looking at it, but that was Ed's main concern he wrote about, and I concur with him. It's a serious problem. And the alternative is to say you've got to do better. If you're not going to let neighborhoods and not people have a right to ask for things in the way other members of the public can ask for their neighborhood calming of their streets, then you've got to empower them somehow. Because just having a policeman show up on Ridgewood once a month is not sufficient, right? And I think that there can be a large ask. What measures are you taking to control what will be larger traffic on streets that are already problematic, right?
Jill, can I ask a question off of what you just said?
Yeah.
So if I think what you are getting to as well as Ed is arterial roads are not addressed, collector roads are not addressed too much. There is an appendix which shows which roads are eligible for this policy. The draft is neighborhood street traffic calming program, right? But within this draft, it doesn't tell us or give us a way if it's not a local road, how does an arterial road resident or collector road resident bring up and bring to the town their concern with their roadway for traffic calming?
I mean, they say right in there, go to the complete state policy, make applicable. I mean, it's absolutely much harder, much more difficult, and probably nothing will happen. I mean, we'll just be honest, given what we've learned about road diet, how long
Right.
that's taken.
I'm in agreement, and that the primary concern is livability. I wouldn't use that word choice because I live on an arterial road in this circumstance, or I think a collector road, and I'm 100% sure every day my concern is livability. And I don't see a way for me to raise the town any action that they should take within this program. So if I'm a local road, this draft covers what I can do as a next step as a local road. But what I don't see is if I'm not a local road, how do I take action and how can I present that to the town?
And I think we're all trying to say the same thing in a sense. There's what they're trying to do. If you look at also the options that are identified, they are more appropriate and they're designed for local roads. They're not designed for or identified for collector and arterial roads primarily. Many of them are, the speed humps, some of that works are just not applicable for the collector roads. So, I mean, they are really designing this as a neighborhood local road program. And I think that's been the disconnect is there's still many other roads within the town that there's something that can be done. And I think there's a disconnect of what the intent of this traffic calming program is, which is, I mean, they very narrowly focused it on a traditionally defined neighborhood roadway. And maybe that's part of the issue is it just doesn't go far enough to discuss overall roadways within the town from a safety perspective, but it's much more traffic calming. They're talking about putting one-way streets in. They're talking about dead ending.
Excuse me, I have someone's at the door. I'm sorry.
So the solutions are very much focused on ones that are applicable to local roads. So that's everything they've developed here is a solution for local roads, but they've done traffic calming per se and other things. Look at Farmington Avenue, putting medians in was a significant traffic calming. They did curb bulb outs and traffic calming on Boulevard. And that's not, so they've done that type of stuff, but within what they're saying here, it's not, I think, focused on.
Interestingly, Ken, some of the photographs they use in the appendix that illustrate the various traffic calming methods are from Farmington Avenue, are from Boulevard. So it's a little curious that they did it that way.
Yeah, it's a hodgepodge of things because you look at the traffic calming measures, right? I mean, they did some of them because they did it, right? You can say Boulevard and others have curb bulb outs, and so I think it's a mix of things and not overly organized appropriately across the board. So I think that's where we're running into lots of trouble because it's not doing this and not doing that.
Just want to pause there.
And even in the appendix with those traffic engineering or traffic calming measures, some of them are taken from ITE. And when you look at what it says, it's applicable to collector, applicable to arterial. So they have a conflict within that also. I also noted that their resources, the most recent resource they used was 2013. Many of the things they used were from 1999, 2000.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, there's a lot been happening.
State of the practice has advanced so much since then. So
Could I suggest that we might pose a question of, I mean, what the underlying assumption that I read under here is we're not going to slow down traffic. We're not going to consider the livability of these other streets. They're not priorities. And I think that's the question is, can they come up with some explicit comparable system whereby residents, and these roads, I've got a lot of residents on Sedgwick and Ridgewood and Mountain, that residents in these areas have the rights to a very formal way, not complete streets policy where it only holds when they're redoing a road, but that citizens living in those areas have equal rights to actually request something be done about speed, something be done about dangerous driving. I mean, it seems so two classes of citizens. And it also seems that they're willing to say, well, these other roads can be fast, and they're not supposed to be fast.
Now, one thing that we might look at is, and I'm not sure what page it's on, but where they list the roads that are not eligible, because there were some things, even if we're just talking about local roads, I thought were a little questionable, and they could apply across the board to any
Right.
kind of a street. I don't know how many pages that is from where you are, Daniel. I know I had a comment.
On the program overview, I just want to pause real quick. Anyone dialed in from the public?
I don't think anybody's dialed in.
No, I don't know if they can get in.
Okay. Ed Pollock, just to raise it, the only questions so far in the chat on YouTube. So Ed Pollock said, is livability not a priority on collector or arterial roads? Does the town believe that traffic does not need to be calmed on collector or arterial roads? Question mark. And a third question, which is police enforcement, which is including the documents, absolutely appropriate for collector and arterial roads. So his ask is that the PBC will pose these questions to the town. And Jill, you have framed that well. So we can ask these questions. Is livability a priority on collector arterial roads? Does the town believe that traffic does not need to be calmed on collector arterial roads? My question on that what would be the process for traffic calming to initiate that step? And then has the town done anything to reduce speed on collector or arterial roads? So we can ask for follow-up on that. All right, I'll move on. I think it's what you want to do, Sandy, right, is move on to this document.
Yeah, I think I have a comment on, I believe, the next page where they list all the traffic calming measures.
Yeah, and I apologize. You're probably seeing my edits in this document because it's way too confusing to show two different PDFs and try and monitor my screen. So, what's your question, Sandy?
Bike lanes / sharrows. Sharrows should never be mentioned. First of all, they're not a facility. They're not a safety facility. They're a marking on a roadway that tells people where to position themselves. It lets motorists know that bicycles might be on the road. They should be listed as separate entities. And really, a sharrow is not a safety measure. Ken, do you have any thoughts on that?
no, I mean, I think they primarily now help with wayfinding to any large. That's the extent of the value of them at this point in time. So I agree completely.
Yeah. What I didn't see on here is pavement paint and marking. So painted bike lanes and painted buffer or refuge areas. There's a resident, Hendry, who's actually working with the Clean Energy Commission, but he took some pictures who's on vacation, of painted roadways. So the bike lane is painted green. Myself, visually, I think COVID has been quite the experiment for instructions. Painted, when you're in line prior to the mask restriction, when you're in line, they used to have painted or stickers to say "stand here" for 6 feet apart. Everyone followed that. So I feel like painting as a method is also not included here. But Sandy or Commission, what are your thoughts on painting and pavement markings be added to this list here?
Well, they probably didn't include painted bike lanes because of the roads they're looking at. They're probably not the most useful for the local roads. Painted bike lanes don't serve that purpose for those roads in many conditions. So that's probably why I would think they didn't list them
What do
here.
you mean by that? Like, if I'm on a side street, a painted bike lane would not help me as a cyclist?
It's just generally not in the suggested treatment method. Yeah. There's paintings, there's a lot of, they're meant for like heavy trafficked areas, more through intersections, or they're not generally used for longer distances, the cost, the maintenance. So they're meant to demarc sort of certain special areas. And when you're talking local roads, that's generally not the case because we're talking low volumes generally. So
I would definitely argue a little bit on that, just from the sense of, even if it's a lower volume road, it's a visual cue for the driver to stay within a certain area and not deviate from that path. I'm on South Quaker, and the parking lane, as you would call it, is a travel lane, depending on what time of day and the motorist, right? So.
Oh, I agree completely, but you got to remember South Quaker is not a local road.
It's not, but.
So that's why it's probably not listed here.
Possible, right?
What?
And it's not listed. It's not on the list for this program. My question is, does pavement paint and markings assist with the traffic calming?
Yeah, and if we get them to add, that's what I think Sandy was getting at. If we get them to add collector and arterial roads, then there's many more options they should be putting on this list. This list, because it's solely focused on local roads, there's a narrower sort of list of treatments. Okay,
and then bike lanes on a local road should just be painted with borders and not green, is what you're.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Daniel. Yeah, Daniel, I have to leave the meeting. I'm sorry, we got started so late. I thought we'd be further along, but I just have one other comment about all these traffic calming. They say, they're very careful. They say that these calming measures, and that you've got to highlight, can produce unintended consequences. And they don't mention the unintended hazards that they are putting up for some of these with cyclists. So, raised intersection curb extensions are not a cyclist friends. They put a cyclist, especially curb extension, into a zone of danger. Traffic bumps that go all the way to the edge. Once it's a little bit dark, a cyclist can't see that there's a bump. There's a number of those speed bumps I wrote. And raised crosswalks are also difficult with bicycle tires. So it's interesting that they haven't considered any of those hazards that they are creating. And I'm sorry I have to leave, but my recommendation, a strong recommendation, is that before any neighborhood traffic calming could be put in any neighborhood, that it be passed through either the bicycle commission or that it be shown to not be a bike route or not have any of these hazards for cyclists.
You're absolutely right, Jill, because these, traffic calming sometimes are counterproductive to bicyclists. Many traffic calmings are very beneficial to pedestrians, but there's sometimes counters or unintended consequences for bicyclists. Farmington Avenue is a great example going towards Hartford. The curb bulb outs and the narrow and medians definitely slow down traffic, but they've narrowed it to the point that it's not as comfortable for bicyclists.
The one they mention across a number of them is may force bicyclists to share travel lanes with motor vehicles. So it's not as overt as I'd like to see it, Jill, but they do mention that across a number of them, that when it forces a bike into a motorist.
Yeah, I mean, a perfect example of a cyclist nightmare is North Steel, of what they allowed the developer to do to traffic calm that road, puts cyclists in precarious positions. It's a very narrow lane, and if a car doesn't see the cyclist, there's no way for anybody to go anywhere but run over the cyclist. So I think that maybe I'm sorry to take up this talk time and then leave, but that's something we can make very, very clear, that this is really important. It's not a second thought, that we have to consider when they're putting in a calming measure that is seriously hazardous to cyclists, that they should think twice and think of perhaps other ways of calming. And there may be roads where bump outs don't matter. I mean, a road has a dead end, or I don't know, but in many cases, it does matter.
Bring that up. Thanks, Jill.
Yeah, I'm sorry I have to leave. I thought we'd probably be through by now, so.
We get done early, as you thought?
I thought we'd get done with this and then do the other stuff. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I have to go.
So we do still have a quorum if you drop. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, we're okay. Thank you, Joe.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Moving on, I don't see any public comments. Let me just check here. Ethan Frankel, did you join the call? I see you're on YouTube chat. Okay. Eligibility. Traffic calming measure should only be implemented when there's demonstrated need, and it should not be influenced by unsubstantiated, persistent requests or pressures that may arise due to inconvenience that these measures may cause to some individuals. Personally, since we're talking about neighborhood traffic calming, I would like that clearly defined so far as eligibility. So if this document is for, I think, local roads as it's labeled, I would like to hear local roads in that beginning of the sentence as opposed to traffic calming. Maybe that's just my detail there. So these are areas that are not eligible for traffic calming.
When I looked at this list, the things that struck me were, number one, why would we say if the 85th percentile speed was 33 miles per hour or less, a street didn't deserve traffic calming? 33 is pretty high if we're talking neighborhood streets. And I didn't know why adjacent to a commercially zoned area wouldn't be applicable. Like if you think of the center, well, they've done all kinds of traffic calming there. And the volume less than 3,000 vehicles a day. Sometimes you want to do traffic calming to discourage traffic, to get it to a different level. To say that it has to be 3,000 to start with doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and
Sandy, I think it's 500 to 3,000. I think it's between 500 and 3,000. Oh, not eligible. Okay, I misread it. You're right.
Yeah, not eligible.
Yeah, more than 3,000 vehicles, you can't. And that
That
just seems low to me.
Wait, if it's not eligible, oh no, or more than 3,000.
Yeah, if you have more than 3,000 vehicles, you're not eligible for traffic calming. If you have 85th percentile speeds that is 33 miles per hour or less, you're not eligible.
Okay. Yeah, I don't like the transit bus routes because there actually are some bus routes on very local neighborhood streets in the town. Surprising ones.
Sandy, so this 85th percentile, speed 33 miles per less, is that already established on some database what the 85th percentile for each street is? Or
No,
does
they'd probably have to do traffic counts. And I think they talk later about
Yeah.
over what length of time the counts would be done. Usually you can do a count, you get the volumes, you get the speeds.
Okay, that wasn't clear to me here. That after review, 85th percentile, speed 33 miles per less. Any questions on eligibility other than what Sandy just raised? Anything that needs to be removed? So it sounds like, Sandy, you had right, the adjacent to commercial zone area. How would you suggest requesting that be reworded?
I think what we would say
Or
is
remove.
we question the decision that these various types of streets segments would not be eligible. That's really what we're questioning.
Yeah, I don't think it's rewording. It's not appropriate to have it excluded. Though that line's just not an appropriate bullet.
Okay. The traffic calming, so the traffic volume is less than 500 vehicles per day or more than 3,000 per day.
Yeah, and it's really on the high end. I think they're right. If they're less than 500 vehicles, you know, that seems like why would we spend our time on a street like that? But
Well,
having more than 3,000 vehicles per day, it might very well be a street that should be a candidate. A lot of times they're cut through streets that
That's
you
what I was
get
thinking,
more
yeah.
traffic driven to them. Yeah.
so what are your beginning and end points? So traffic volume less than 500 vehicles per day is not eligible. I think of those cut through streets that may not get that many vehicles, but when they do, they're flying through.
Well, what we're
Right.
talking about, I think I'm not arguing with the 500 vehicles per day. I'm saying they should allow streets with volumes greater than 3,000 vehicles per day
Okay.
to be candidates for this program. I don't know what the upper limit should be. You have any thoughts, Ken?
I don't think there needs to be an upper limit because you're gonna, some of the improvements and such are gonna limit you based on, you know, as the vehicle speed, number of vehicles gets high up. So
Is the bullet itself necessary? Aren't there enough other bullets that will speak to this? I mean, not specifically volume, but it's just like too many Venn diagrams intersecting.
well, I think if they just leave it at the less than 500, that's not eligible. That's what they're trying to get at. You didn't need that upper limit, but if you do the less than 500, that is those very small, and you can see there's a number of streets that are just, you know,
But why does volume have anything to do with speed and severity of one person getting hit?
That's what I'm.
100 cars come through at 75 miles an hour, then I'm just as worried about 3,000 cars coming through at 40 miles an hour. In fact, it's worse.
I guess I would assume that less than 500, you're at sort of the endpoints of sort of a network that you're not having those speeds because if you look at the map, it kind of plays out. Those are the almost the back parts of neighborhoods that are not having those speeds, not having those flying cars because you're in that last segment of a road network.
So there's a correlation with number of vehicles and speed people are driving over the limit or things like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Can we just ask for this bullet to be removed? Because
Yeah, I like that.
it only takes one car to hurt someone. And
I don't think anyone's arguing that. It's that the applications of what you can do. I think the town's just trying to say there's a limited amount of.
you could put any one of these infrastructure changes, such as a speed hump or, I feel like you could do any one of these depending on however the traffic volume is. It's just, is it the right choice at the right time?
I think the point that Ken's making, and I mentioned this earlier, a roadway that has 500 vehicles per day, is that where the town wants to spend its resource to calm traffic? Or
Well,
is it on those roadways that have more volume? That's a question.
Higher frequency, higher probability.
it has, so this program has a procedure, right? This just says this is ineligible to even be looked at for a procedure. So whether or not the street has 500 or less fails the procedure is a different set of criteria, but automatically, if it has less than 500 vehicles, it's not even allowed to go through this program. And that's my concern, is that we won't allow a road with less than 500 vehicles to enter this process.
But the question is, do we know that there are roads with 500 or less vehicles that are a problem? I would think likely they're not. They're very low volume. People only go there who happen to live there because they're sort of on the ends of the network, as Ken mentioned. That's why they don't have much volume.
For an example, if you go to the map at the end, you can see there's a whole bunch of those streets that's why they're not identified, because they've already screened them out. And they're screened out because of I'm sure they figured there's less than 500 vehicles on those streets.
I think the bigger issue is putting a maximum, the 3,000 vehicles, and also saying that if the speeds are 33 miles per hour or less, we don't care. I think those are really big deals. Along with commercially zoned area, transit bus routes, and the question about arterials or collectors. State highways, leave that on the list. We don't have many state highways, and for state highways, you're dealing with the DOT. So the town can't set up a procedure for the state highways without DOT buying into it at this point.
I'm still in why we'd want to restrict anyone from walking this program if they meet the other criteria here. So I'll think about the discussion. So moving on to the next question, process for requesting.
Daniel, the one way of, the criteria for the rating later on, you're almost reformatting the whole process, because the criteria they have, those streets with less than 500 wouldn't get any points anyway to get through the system.
They wouldn't get, yeah. Well, right. When we get into the criteria, there's a lot of questions in that.
Yeah, so that's probably why they just didn't want people to
get the criteria, Ken. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, people just may not want people to have to go through this process and even try to apply when they aren't going to be eligible through the criteria. So it's almost a pre-screening.
So does this need a supplement of, if you do not meet the criteria eligibility for here, this is the process you take? Because for me as a resident, I can now turn to this document if it's approved and say, I meet this eligibility criteria. This is what I need to gather from other residents and take steps. What if I don't meet this eligibility? Like, where am I going to go? Just email the town manager?
I think that's the question. If we're saying we think these other roads should be eligible, we're asking them to modify this document to include other roads.
Okay. Let me just check for any resident feedback on YouTube. Jay Stange, I don't think we've gotten there yet, Jay, but the questions are, why are there no protected bike lanes in West Hartford? Why less than 900 feet? So that's, we're going to get into just a little bit too. So why less than 900 feet not qualify? That's enough room to get up to 45 or 50 miles per hour on a neighborhood drag strip. And then the question, what is horizontal geometry? So that's a little bit later. But Ken, any thoughts, or maybe you don't have the thoughts, the answer for that, but a little bit later, it's chosen 900 feet as distance between 2 points makes it ineligible. Do you have any insight on that from your perspective?
Okay, I think we'll have to go to where it is in the document. I'm not sure what the references are.
Actually, right there. Sorry. Thanks, Jay. So total length and distance between stop signs
Right
less
there.
than 900 feet would make it ineligible.
I'm assuming that's basic. I defer to Sandy. She may even know that better than me. Is that just basic 900 feet? I'm trying to just maybe the distance of stopping between stop signs, that it's going to immediately be there's not much you can do between those two different.
Yeah. I don't know. I was just going to measure my street and see how far 900 feet is on my street.
It's 900 feet,
about
Sandy.
that. What?
It's 900 feet if you measure it.
I know. So I have to measure it. I can't picture 900 feet on my street. So I've got Google Earth up. I'm going to mute myself. I'll report back after investigating.
So 900 feet is 0.17 miles. So slightly less than a quarter.
I'm assuming that's based on some regulation that exists. Or
Can we ask the town for clarity on that? I think speed bump would jump to mind. I think of like not that these roads are part of it, but a apartment complex would have a speed bump, very short distance between stop signs. All right, moving down to, everyone's still see my screen? So the process for requesting and evaluating traffic calming.
Hey, just back on the 900 feet. I think the blocks of like 4 Mile.
Sandy, I can't hear you at a probably a very important part.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
I think 900 feet is more than the distance of the blocks where they did traffic calming on Newport and 4 Mile between Ellsworth and Boulevard. So that sort of calls 900 feet into question, I think. So maybe we want to raise that as a question also.
Yeah,
I agree with Jay.
just ask them where it came from. What's the purpose?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that
I
anymore.
mean, 900 feet is 3 football fields. It's pretty long.
No, 900 feet is 1 football field.
300 feet,
yards.
100
yards.
yards. Right, 300 feet is one football
Oh
field.
yeah. Okay, my math's, yes.
So
Your math's
900
better than
feet
mine.
is 3 football fields, and that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
If you think about having to drive that, that's pretty far.
Yeah. Your
Yeah.
math's much better than mine.
We'll ask for clarity on that. The process for requesting and evaluating traffic calming, I like the flow chart better. makes it a little bit easier to understand, but report a problem. And this is where I was thinking of the less than 500, or even why we have volume limits. But the process is initiated when a resident submits the request to the engineering division. The town's legal traffic authority may also initiate the process when they've identified a traffic-related concern. Still no alternative presented for arterial or collector roads. Eligibility review. The town will check the traffic calming eligibility map, which is later in this deck in the appendix. If it determines that calming practices are not applicable, the engineering division will notify the requester and provide recommendations for appropriate educational or enforcement strategies. And then I'm trying to think of needs assessment. So they'll be prioritized based on scoring criteria outlined below, which considers travel speed, traffic volumes, peak hour volume, crash history, presence of sidewalks, and proximity to pedestrian generators. Maximum score is 25 points, and limited funding is available. So I'll open it up to, let me jump down to the criteria. Apologies for my notes being on screen. Commission members, so far, any questions on the evaluation criteria, or what are your concerns or any thoughts?
Hey, Daniel. Paul.
Hey, Paul.
I've been pretty quiet. I figured I'll chime in here.
Perfect. Welcome.
One thing that I kind of see interesting here is it seems like, the enforcement strategy is almost a fallback or a second thought. I think, that needs to kind of come to the forefront, because I think that really does influence behavior. Just having, lived and driven in other places, people certainly kind of internalize that and behave differently when they know that, not only the presence there, but the action and the willingness to pull people over. So I think I would just make that general comment. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. And just to summarize what you said, Paul, or recap, so I have it. What does that enforcement strategy look like? And have that be more clear in this document for the enforcement strategy?
Yeah, I think in last year there was actually a new sergeant added specifically for that that role, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe just fleshing that out a little more in terms of, I don't actually have numbers on West Hartford. I just have whatever it is, the Central Infractions Bureau that all our tickets go through. But my thought is that it's probably, if you're looking at a 10-year kind of average of enforcement delineated by actual citations, it would be lower than it was, in the 90s, early 2000s. So
yeah,
metric there. I think it's something that's already kind of in the budget, and it's not really a burden to perhaps refine and study a little bit more. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Anyone else? What I need clarity on, if no one else is speaking, just want to make sure, is these point system, and points are assigned based on 85th percentile. If a street is less than 30 miles per hour posted speed limit, it's not eligible for this program. It still isn't clear to me where they capture these values, at what stage. Is the request made and then they determine what percentile speed travel's at before they assign these points, because on a posted speed to value percentage, we're not looking at many. If you're over 30 miles an hour, you're not eligible for this program. I feel like we're missing a bunch of people. So it could be my understanding. What do others think?
Daniel, I think these are all done after the initial application is done. Then the town would go out and do an assessment of travel speed and volumes and such. So this would be done after the fact to collect more information.
Ken, do you see that laid out in the doc? I might have missed it. So do you see it laid out in the document where it says upon the request, the road will be evaluated and then a percentile will be assigned with the value for speed?
I don't, but that's the only way they could get that. The town doesn't have that information for every roadway in town.
Right.
So,
I don't want to leave it to chance, right, of where they're getting this data. If it was you mentioned 2013, some data was used from. I would like it clearly in this document that a request is made, the traffic will be evaluated, and then a value will be placed at that point in time.
Makes sense?
Ken, are you okay with that too? Can't see you, but oh, you're in the mountains. Maybe stepped out. Colin, you make me hungry. So
Sorry.
it's okay. Looking at this, just for everyone's awareness, right? We have travel speed, traffic volume, peak hour volume, crash history, sidewalks, and pedestrian generator. Understandably, high traffic speed has high points and looks into the traffic calming program. But it seems a little bit heavy on the side of looking at motorist behavior and not how this is actually used by a pedestrian. So if it's a heavy pedestrian traffic area or bicycle or has a high crash history, there's some pretty low scoring points here. So crash history +6 crashes only gets 2 points towards eligibility, while sidewalks, again, no sidewalks, only gets 2, as well as pedestrian generator, which to me looks at schools, parks, libraries, community centers, measured from the midpoint. So less than a quarter mile still only gets a 3. Do you think these are weighted properly? If there's a maximum of 25, which is what they say the maximum, you'd have to max out every single one of these criteria. I don't disagree maybe with a maximum of 25, but I would like to see crash history on a different scale than 0, 1, 2, 3. Same with sidewalks and same with pedestrian generator. When I look at a school zone, less than a quarter mile, to me that should be a huge trigger for traffic calming. What are other thoughts?
Especially when you
I
consider
was
the
looking at
3-year.
oh,
I was just gonna say, especially when you consider the 3-year time period for the crashes, that's quite a long time to generate the numbers. But go ahead.
that's usually what you'll use for crashes, just to balance them out. But I noticed, I was looking at a Burlington, Vermont traffic calming manual, and it had things like location where the crash rate is higher than the average for that type of street. And they also had, like, if one bicycle crash had happened in the past year, that was cause to feel that you should do traffic calming. If there had been one pedestrian crash, like really valuing those vulnerable user crashes over motor vehicle.
Yeah, and would you want this to like considered for the criteria, right? When to me that would change things. Like why would you know, if I'm in a 3 to 5, but 3 to 5 of those are pedestrian bicycle, you only get 1 point on this evaluation.
I would break it out and have a separate one for vulnerable users crashes with points. That's
a good. I like that.
Yeah, that's more appropriate than lumping everything together.
I think that's a really great point, Ken. What about pedestrian generator? And sidewalk proximity, I don't know if that's a concern for anyone as well, like sidewalk proximity to traffic, less buffer. But you were going to say something?
No, I mean, it's tough to understand how this criteria would play out without sort of almost doing a few case examples, because I'm struggling to see how one street may play out over another street to see if it's actually, you know, appropriate.
Yeah. Really quick.
Actually, there's some streets that don't have sidewalks because the neighbors would never permit sidewalks to go in. So we don't really necessarily want to give them a whole lot of points for having created a dangerous or allowed a dangerous situation to continue. I'm thinking Cliffmore. I think that's the one.
That's an interesting point, see. Yeah.
Ken, you mentioned like a couple of use cases. I'd be curious too, right? If you took a few streets, how they would lay with this criteria, eligible and eligible, just on the criteria factor. Jay Stange asked the commission to strike, to ask the town to remove 900 feet between stop signs from eligibility bullets.
That was the one we asked for clarification for us. Yeah, we've already, that was on your notes, right, Daniel, to ask what their meaning there?
I do have asked for clarification. I'm not sure the timing of Jay and asking for clarification. What we can do, Jay, if you can hear, is ask for clarification, then follow up, and then depending on that, ask for the removal. I don't know what other clarification would yeah, we don't know where 900 came from. It's kind of, from your experience, Ken and Sandy, it sounds a little arbitrary. Maybe it was a Sunday, somebody's playing football and they came this vote. So we'll follow up, Jay, and get a response on that. 8:32. The meeting on the agenda is scheduled till 8:30. We started a little bit late. Megan, as host, are we able to continue?
Yes, you can still continue.
Okay. It's ironic you're in traffic. We're talking about a traffic calming program, right? I'm going to move a little bit ahead. Actually, I'm not. So going down after the criteria, planning discussion will be conducted with the requester to further define the traffic-related concerns and goals. This discussion also provides an opportunity for town staff to outline the process and explain the format and requirements of a petition, right? So this is step 4. Determining appropriate street traffic involves understanding roadway network, traffic calming measures, etc. It does discuss where if you make one traffic calming measure on one street, it may go to another street. So community support. So this is part 5 of the process. Again, it's a multiple step process. Community support, submit a petition with support of 75% of the residents to the engineering division for review and validation. I don't understand what 75% of the residents would be. You know, if you have 4 and 3, does this pass? You know, does it require a response rate? So I'm not clear on what a petition is. There is an appendix. You want me to jump to that?
Well, I think your question is a good one. What's the base of which you're taking 75%? And the other thing, you know, I wonder, do we really want to say that? I mean, that might be a number they use for sidewalks, putting sidewalks in place. I know they have some measure where a few property owners can nix the idea, but it seems like, I mean, I can understand when having an idea raised, they want it to be raised by enough people that they really know there's some support for it. But I don't like the idea that people would vote for whether traffic calming is appropriate or not, because there should be some, you know, some of those criteria. If they're valid criteria, hey, we're measuring this and something really needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing, going back to Paul's comment, I think it's very appropriate for the enforcement, but in this realm of what they're talking about, I think they're saying calming is more of physical activities that'll be lasting and long and could be coupled with enforcement. So enforcement's something, but within this measure, it's not a physical enhancement to a street to reduce for traffic calming. So that's why they most likely did not profile it or highlight that as a option per se, because it's not physical.
Paul, did you want to comment on that?
No, I can appreciate that, but I think you know, it can be, as we can see, kind of really difficult to go through an entire town's infrastructure to kind of reconcile some of these things, and it just brings up you know, a host of issues too on who gets what, how much it's going to cost, and it's a lot. I guess my comment was just general, just put a blanket over everything, increase enforcement, and but yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, and
I agree completely with everything you're saying, but I think that's what they're trying to say, which is good that they're realizing just having a cop out there once in a while is not the long-term solution, but it's an important component of it.
right.
So Sandy, Daniel brought up, and I've used before, I think what's done in Burlington, Vermont, and maybe have the town visit that one. It's got more current citations. It's got more current terminology. It's got everything about it is much more current than what was developed here and what's within here. And it may just be that's a better starting point for this whole approach. They don't have this petition process, but they have a much clearer way of approaching it all. I'm not sure if the town consulted it or looked at it at all, but it doesn't appear to be since it's not referenced. And Sandy, your thoughts on that one? I think that's a really good one.
Yeah, I was really impressed when I came across that, and because it's an update. They were really progressive several years ago when they put together their traffic calming manual, and this is just in the last year or two, I think in the last year.
Yeah,
and I really liked the measures they used in terms of how they determined whether an intervention was needed. And they also are pretty clear about This manual is about engineering improvements that can physically affect the speed. We're not
Yeah.
talking about the other things.
They did, yeah, they did not talk about enforcement and education. They're very clear on that. So if you're going to talk about it, right, make it understandable, or at least know what the process is for enforcement or education. They do get into that a little bit later in the appendix here, but it's still pretty, kind of up to interpretation. So, Ken, to present it to the town, ask the question if they referenced the Burlington, Vermont. Have they reviewed the Burlington, Vermont document?
Yeah, I mean, their references, as Sandy pointed out, the most current one is 2013. There's a lot of more current references, and that traffic calming one is probably one of the better ones and more appropriate ones. And they talk about in that one there, complete streets are those arterial streets which maybe do not get local traffic calming, which we're talking about like a speed hump and such, but have other applicability as complete streets. And there's a complete streets perspective that should be applied to those. So they have a sort of a tiered process. They don't just cast them aside and say nothing's, it's all within the traffic calming program, but there's different levels of applicability, which is what we're kind of talking about.
Okay. Item 6, neighborhood involvement, have a meeting. Number 7, neighborhood feedback survey. Development of conceptual neighborhood traffic calming plan. So concepts presented. This is still step 8. Concept plan concurrence, which 60% or more of the property owners are in support of the proposed concept plan, the project will be advanced to design and construction. An exception may be made intended to address a documented safety issue if not supported by 60% or more. Less than tier 1 or tier 2 solutions will be implemented, which goes into education. Trial, installation, and evaluation. So again, we're back in the trial world for a 3 to 6 month period. I feel like there's a lot of legwork in this process, and not necessarily the commitment to traffic calming. Could just be me on a Thursday. Then finally, designate, construct, permanent installation, follow up, 1-year look back, and any modifications. This is the process map. So here, traffic concern reported. Again, I don't see here a percentile evaluation process. I just see eligible for traffic calming, so I want to raise that. If it is eligible, it has to go through needs assessment, the scoring, the criteria we talked about earlier, which does the crash rate doesn't look at vulnerable user crash history. We need to understand maybe a couple of use case examples of streets that they could evaluate using this scoring method before moving forward, which is tier 3. Again, there's always a loop back if not possible. If you're new to process maps, apologies. You basically follow the arrows on a yes/no scenario. So think of a fork in the road. You can only go left or right. If we move forward, needs assessment scoring, this is where we have different 15 points or more. It's actually going to fast forward to development concept plan. So it's only 11 points or more that go through these different measures, which include petitions, community support. Still don't understand what petition is. Neighborhood involvement meeting, feedback survey, and then concept planning. So if it's 11 to 15 points, it has to go through a longer process. 15 points or more, it jumps ahead. If neighborhood support, no matter what of those two circumstances, is less than 60, we jump back into enforcement measures. Unclear. Some are, but we'll look at those. Neighborhood support is greater than 60 if needed, temporary installation, or if not needed. I don't know what defines as needed, but take a look. And then traffic calming measures and follow you up, evaluation, issue resolved, no. And then no. Actually, this process map is wrong because it goes to tier 2 enforcement. So it should probably loop back to needs assessment. But take a look at that process map. Because if the issue is resolved, then it just goes into enforcement. Any questions on the process map? So program revisions, I feel there's an area for opportunity. It's left very vague. The neighborhood traffic calming program will be revised from time to time based on experience with the implementation of traffic calming programs within the town of West Hartford and as traffic practices evolve. There's no definitive end date of this traffic calming program procedures outlined is not useful for the town or a review period. I would like to see, just as a person presenting to the commission, reviewed annually with town staff, commission members. For the moment, I put some placeholders with Bike West Hartford, Pedestrian Bicycle Commission, the Board of Ed, because we're talking about proximity to schools, the Senior Citizens Advisory Board, and then Persons with Disability Commissions, and any others as well. So I personally, either annually or a later date, would like to have this program reviewed so it does not become a standing document that is not able to keep up with the progress of the town. What do others think? Or any questions?
That seems like a good idea, Daniel. And it brings to mind, I had a note back on an earlier page where they talked about a traffic calming review committee. And I thought that we should suggest that include a representative of the PBC.
Do you know what page that was, Sandy?
Let me look through my document and I'll tell you.
Okay. Yeah, and I think I granted we're the West Hartford Pedestrian Bicycle Commission, but I think the Board of Ed, Senior Citizen Advisory, Persons with Disability, everyone's impacted by the infrastructure. Kids, seniors, person with disability, they should have a look at this program. Is it working? Are there issues that we're not bringing up to the forefront within the infrastructure? Does review annually work well for you?
Yes.
Ken, Paul, Sandy, have the program reviewed annually? Is that?
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Yeah, annually I almost put it similar. Maybe there's an annual report provided from the department.
They could make that part of their annual complete streets report.
Yeah.
Instead of saying a separate report, put it into that.
How many were, submitted, what was actually done, and
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
So aside from review, so instead of reviewed annually, I just want to make sure I capture this right. It's instead of reviewed annually with town staff and commission members, just include an annual complete streets report. I mean, what are your feelings towards these reports? If say we got a report and traffic calming is included, is there something in here procedurally where we can review it with town staff and commission?
yeah, I think it's appropriate to have both, but it would be nice for them to do the report and then this, what you said there is also appropriate to have a reviewed
Okay.
annually with town staff.
Yeah.
But let's
I
have
get-
something to review beforehand, which would be the report. Otherwise,
Yeah.
we're doing all the legwork.
So report and then reviewed annually. Right. Let me just check from the public. I don't see anyone that joined the call yet. Again, apologies to callers. I don't see any new comments on YouTube. Funding for the program will be allocated through capital improvement program budget or grant funding. In order to best utilize the limited budget and personal resource town, the priority scoring guidelines given in Table 1 will be utilized to select areas with the greatest need. One thing that was interesting to me was prioritizing on the scoring. I'm not sure how to readjust it, but they say there's a level, a lower scoring item that is in a farther along process, and a higher scoring item comes to play. Does the town pick that up right away when it talks about prioritization, or is it, so is prioritization based on the scoring no matter the time of events, or are they expecting these to be scored all at the same time and then they pick the higher scoring ones? Just not clear on that. So yeah, here's the references that you guys reference as, you know, I don't know if this would pass a college paper for recent references, but so we'll point them towards Burlington. And then we get to the appendix. So this is the talking a little bit more about this, Paul. First, we're going to start with education and public awareness. I have no idea what this sign image represents. I don't know what speed to obey, so I hope we're actually not going to use that one. But this gets into what they're doing for public awareness. Some of these include signage on residential properties. So when we look at that process map and it loops back to education, I don't see any education in community centers or public school program. Enforcement is here. It doesn't say which ones will be used for enforcement. I haven't seen any stealth methods recently, but maybe they're that stealthy. Paul, have you any feedback on this part?
Nothing in particular. Sorry, nothing in particular stands out.
What are your thoughts? So in the traffic calming program, the process map flows to enforcement, right? Enforcement we have here as a, standalone what enforcement is, but it's not specific to the traffic calming program process. So I would like a little more detail of if the traffic calming program process is in place and then it goes to the enforcement route, what does that enforcement route look like for these streets? And then as the appendix gets into a little more detail about signs. And then again, with the appendix, it does have costs for each one of these things. We get into speed hump, etc. So it's at 8:53. what other questions or feedback does the commission or residents have? Just take a look at a couple of these emails.
What I would comment overall on these sheets is while the town says that that this program doesn't apply to arterials or collectors, many of them are listed as being appropriate for arterials or collectors. So it's a little bit of a conflict.
Can you say it again, Sandy? I'm sorry, I was scrolling.
When you look at those sheets, the description of each of the traffic calming measures, many of them are indicated as being appropriate for collectors or arterials, even though earlier on the town says the program is not applicable to those streets. And they use photographs from arterials and collectors.
So the traffic calming program identified solutions do not, could be used on roads that they say are not eligible for this program.
Right. It says that right on their fact sheet that's included in their report that these are appropriate for those streets. So it seems like we should point that out.
Yeah. So trying to move. I selected that. So this is the streets that are identified within this eligible for the traffic calming program. Blue means they've already implemented traffic calming. So anyone watching, check out the blue and see what measures have been done for traffic calming. Green is eligible for traffic calming. Orange is maybe eligible for traffic calming. And no color means not eligible for traffic calming. It's interesting that as you look through some of these streets, what is not eligible, and sections of roadways are eligible versus the entire roadway.
That's got to be the 900-foot length in that area you are, right in the center of the screen.
Mm-hmm.
That's for whatever reason that seems to be,
So traffic calming, chaos, right? Raise more question about that 900 feet. All right. Any other comments or questions from the commission or the public? Again, if you're on the public, it seems to codify the current lack of calming. So let me just check on public comments. So Jay Stange says this document is not ready, which means I'm thinking you're interpreting that as it's a draft. It still needs to be revised, and in this current form, not acceptable. Again, I'm trying to paraphrase. So for Jay Stange on that. Commission, any other questions?
I'm good, Daniel.
Thanks, Paul.
I actually need to drop off here. Can I make a motion to adjourn here?
Yep. It is 9 o'clock. Paul, you may jump off. Just want to make sure we got everyone covered. I'm going to check the public comments again. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night. Take care.
Yep. Thanks for joining last minute.
Bye-bye.
All right. So no further public comments or questions at the moment. So this meeting is adjourned, or motion to adjourn this meeting. Those who say nay, say nay. All right, so we're adjourning the meeting 8:58 p.m. This was a special session regarding the draft of the traffic calming program. We do have our next scheduled meeting in June, so please check out the town website for that information. Thank you everyone for your time. Thanks to the commission to getting together on short notice. Thanks to the public to getting together on short notice. And we look forward to talking to you again soon.
And Daniel,
Yeah.
are you going to take these comments and put them into a letter to the staff or to council, or what are we going to do?
Yep. I was going to take the comments and questions we have for the town, put a draft version together for the commission just to make sure I captured everything that we talked about. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch the video as well. So I've been taking notes, but I want to make sure I get everything covered, and then we'll present that to the town after we've had a chance to review. Does that work, Sandy?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Muted and no
But
good
I
stuff.
think
don't know
it's
what-
coming up. It's sort of short time frame, isn't it, in terms of when that council committee is going to hear this? Like, you know, we may want to send our comments to staff and the council committee.
Right. So Dwayne Martin has been appointed as by the town manager as the person we direct all comments to, and then he filters it out. I think I provided that in an earlier email. So we can present that to Dwayne, and then he will distribute that to town manager and town council. Does that follow your steps, Sandy?
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Okay. Yep, and we'll get this out quickly. All right, thank you, everyone. 9:01. Megan, thanks for jumping on. Thanks for making it happen.
Thank you.
Commission, have a great night. Talk to you soon. And
Thanks,
public, thank
Daniel.
you.
It was a good idea to have this. Thank you.
Thanks.
You're a great idea, Sandy. Thank you.